Hello and welcome back to RC Model Reviews. Today I'm looking at the Walkera QR X350 and here it is. It's the successor to the original QRX. Now this is a 350 Pro I meant to say. See, it's got Pro written on here somewhere. Pro, says it there. QRX 350 Pro. And as I say, it's the successor to the QRX 350 that I've looked at previously. Now, key things I'm obviously going to be looking at are the build quality, because the build quality of the old one, it was pretty shoddy inside. The soldering was awful. Many people complained that their QRXs fell from the sky after wires fell off spontaneously. So we'll be looking to see what the soldering is like inside this little baby. And also they're claiming, let's have a look at the box. They're claiming a, what is it on here? Hold on. Here we go. They're claiming, can't find it. 25-minute high capacity battery makes long flight time. 25 minutes flight time. Now that's a lot. That's a big ask for something, especially considering that the old QRX 350 was really bad in that respect. I mean, even with the highest capacity battery you could put in there, the thing fell from the sky. And I mean, fell from the sky after as little as 5 or 6 minutes. So it wasn't a long endurance multirotor. That was partly due to the way the flight controller was set up. It wasn't good. It had a very high threshold. And then when they hit the threshold, it would just basically slow the motors down, and if you're up high, it would just tumble out of the sky sometimes. People, found their thing suddenly, 1 minute it's flying, next minute it's upside down on the ground because the low voltage cutout circuitry kicked in. So it was basically trashing your $600 multirotor to save your $10 battery. Not a good idea. Anyway, there were workarounds on the internet. People showed you how to disable a low voltage circuit in there, but you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to do that sort of thing, because machines like the QR X350 are designed as a consumer grade product. They're not so much for people like you and I who really enjoy putting multirotors together and working out the nuts and bolts and making it all work. No, it's for the people who just want to buy a box, open it up and fly it. And quite often fly it with a camera on it. It's a flying camera really. It's like the DJI Phantom 2. It's designed for people that want a flying camera, not a radio controlled model, but something they can use to take video, still pictures, with great ease and without having to do a lot of homework and do a lot of building, ready to fly, that's what they call them. So we'll have a look inside this one and see how well it's been constructed. So let's take a look inside this QR X350 Pro and see if it's any better built than the original QR X350 was. The top here, there's a few screws. As in the other one, I do like the fact that the screws go into metal and you're not just screwing into plastic. So these brass inserts and things here mean that you're not going to end up, if you take this off and on a few times, it's not going to end up with the screws just spinning in plastic. So that's a good thing. This is pretty wobbly. Obviously, they've got to keep the weight down. So hopefully, yeah, this is pretty wobbly too. When you join them together, of course, you've got kind of a tube which is more rigid, but they've obviously tried to keep the weight way down here. But here we go, let's look inside. Here's the new Devo M flight controller. Now, interesting thing here. Somebody recently pointed out that this appears to be the ArduPilot and running ArduCopter software. And if that's the case, then I don't know why Walkera aren't telling everybody, because that's got to be a big plus for this particular machine. If this runs ArduCopter, you can use the readily available tools to adjust and configure the flight controller to suit your needs. Change the voltage alarms, change the return to launch behavior, all sorts of wonderful things you can do by using the flight mission planner software, I think it is. So if that's the case, I'll be checking that out, I'll let you know. Then, hey, this becomes a whole lot more useful than it might otherwise be to people who want to go beyond the very basic hover and move around and land. So we'll look at that later on. Anyway, so yeah, a whole new flight controller here from Walkera. There's the little standard Walkera receiver tucked down here. If you're getting the what is it, plug and fly, then obviously you're going to put your own receiver in there. And what I will do actually, just to make it easier for people, because I know a lot of people are going to be buying these, they want to put their own radio gear in there. And to be honest, I'd rather fly this with the FreeSky system than the Walkera system. I'll be measuring the pulse widths and things required to make this work with any other receiver. So I'll give you some configuration details to set up your own transmitter and receiver to work with this controller. Now let's have a closer look at the wiring, because that was where the other one really fell apart. Now, bearing in mind that this could be a cherry-picked product. I mean, when people send me stuff for review, I usually take extra care, because sometimes, if you're going to send a product to someone for review, you're not going to pick the worst one off the assembly line. Sometimes people will look very closely and they'll pick the very best one they can so that it looks good. Sometimes it's not always indicative of the true quality. And remember, the last 350 was just really, really poorly soldered together. This one does seem better, but I mean, there's a few things here. I mean, looking at this, I'm not too impressed with this particular solder connection here. You see the solder's drawn out, the wire is sort of way back there. I mean, there's little things. If you've got people working really hard, you know, being paid a pittance, I suppose they're not going to take the same amount of not going to take as much care and look at the detail as they would do if you're doing it for yourself. But overall, the rest of the soldering doesn't look too bad. The main power wiring, yeah, that's okay. I mean, I'm happy with that. And if we move around, you can see onto that main board there, the soldering's all right. Certainly vastly improved over what it was on the last one that I looked at, the 350 itself, not the 350 Pro. Now, there are some other things here. Generally speaking, quality, a few things I'm not that happy with, and the motors are one of them. Now remember that on a multirotor, vibration is an issue. If you're going to use it as a camera platform, too much vibration will ruin your day. It'll put jello all over your video and so forth. And although this motor looks quite nice, looking inside the holes here, it's pretty rough machining, and there's little bits of machining stuff. That's enough to throw a motor out of balance. So I'm not too impressed with the quality of the motor machining. The outside looks fine, but inside, I don't think these motors are going to be too well balanced. I guess we'll find out when we fire it up though. Just an observation at this stage. And as with the original 350, the GPS unit is stuck in the top there. This is probably some kind of, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, it feels like it's a conductive shielding tape, so it stops the GPS picking up any noise from the flight controller and the ESCs and so forth. So it'll be visible through that plastic to the GPS satellites will be visible through this plastic, but there won't be much getting in from below. Now let's take a look at the differences between the original QR X350 and the 350 Pro, and there are a few of them actually. First thing I notice is the size of the props. Now they've obviously gone to bigger props to give you a better efficiency out of those props, probably a lower kV motor and bigger props, so these will spin more slowly and they'll be more efficient. That adds to the flight time. Now the other thing is, notice that the undercarriage legs, or these legs, seem to be pretty similar, but these have little balls and these have got big fat feet to give it extra lift, because obviously we want to put a camera gimbal under there. It comes with it, you can get a camera gimbal, and to do that you need to have extra ground clearance. One thing I'm not so impressed about is this machine here was actually quite a steady, you know, look, it sits on the ground quite solid, so when you're doing your calibration or your power up, and it calibrates its accelerometers, then it's nice and steady. This one is a little bit wobbly. It's it doesn't seem to, because of these big extended rubbery feet and the fact they don't seem to seat properly in the plastic arms, it's a little bit dodgy in that respect. But hey, now there were aluminium or aluminum prop nuts on this one. This has got kind of plastic, that's got a metal insert. I think that's probably again to save a little bit of weight, and every ounce matters when you're trying to get the longest endurance. Now obviously battery, this was designed for a little 3-cell, about a 2200 battery. This one obviously has a huge mouth, and they've lowered the bottom of the fuselage quite a bit, which also means that, again, this sits quite a bit higher than that, because not only do we have the leg lifts here, but we also have a deeper body, which gives the rest of it a bit of a boost up. Now, it comes with a 5200 milliampere hour battery, I think, which again is to contribute to the longer flight times. Here is that battery, and as you can see, it is a 5200 milliampere hour. It's only 10C, but that's okay because it means we can draw 52 amps from it with a 10C rating. Remember, multiply the C rating times the capacity to get the continuous maximum current you can draw. And I don't think this is going to draw anywhere near 50 amps. These little motors, not particularly hungry, I don't think. So yeah, but I think this battery, you have to be a bit careful in charging. I think it only accepts a fairly low charge rate, so it's really sort of quite squished up. The benefit is, of course, this is much cheaper than the equivalent DJI battery for the Phantom 2, which costs an arm and a leg, over $100 I think. These are 50, 60 bucks, so half the price. Will they be half the performance? I don't know. We'll find that out in the flight tests. Now here is the rather cute little brushless gimbal that you can use with the 350. It has its own little controller board here, and a couple of look like brushless motors to control the gimbal. It's a 2-axis gimbal, not 3-axis, so but that should be more than enough for the kind of work you'll be doing with the 350. And it has anti-vibration mounts. As you can see, it's got the little rubber cushions there that are so often used to try and reduce jello, keep the vibration to a minimum. And as I pointed out with the motors, given that the motors don't look the best in terms of balance, that anti-vibration mount may get a bit of a workout. So we'll put the eye look in it and see how it works. Fitting the eye look to the gimbal was a pretty simple task. It's just a couple of Allen key or hex screws in the back there you undo to remove this little front bracket. And yeah, it looks pretty simple. It seems reasonably well balanced. With this antenna here, it's actually dragging it down on this side. So, yeah, choice of antenna is going to be an issue. They do provide a little cloverleaf antenna now. They don't tell you if it's left or right polarized. And the pre-release sample I sent me was left-hand polarized, so something to be aware of. One thing I have noticed is once you put it in the thing, you can't change the little switches for frequency very easily because they're actually partially covered by the back of the gimbal unit. So yeah, that's a bit of a pain. If they just made that a little bit wider, you'd still be able to change frequencies without having to remove the camera from the gimbal. Bit of an oversight, but yes, nothing major. So there we go. I'll try a different antenna and see whether it balances properly. Okay, here's that pre-release circularly polarized antenna they sent me, and yeah, even with that on, it's still it's not too bad, I suppose. Yeah, it's pretty close, so that's okay. I certainly hope the production ones are a better quality than this one. It's pretty dodgy, I've got to say. The wire is incredibly thick. There's a lot of space between the center and the screen, and yeah, the soldering is okay. But that's just a pre-production, so we won't judge them on that. So there we go. Now I'll bolt this to the bottom of the QRX. One thing I have noticed is there's a plethora of little cables and things, little things like this, and where's that go? Yeah, I don't know. And then again, the camera itself has this lead with all these different things on it. It could be more nicely integrated. I think the system lacks a bit of integration. If it was sort of, you get the feeling that everything is an afterthought a little bit with this. Even the wiring on the bottom of the multirotor itself, for example, we take this lead here. I mean, we've got 3 separate pins. Why couldn't that be a single connector with 3 pins instead of 3 separate ones? Because this just makes it more likely someone's going to plug it in wrong. So why not just make it into like a servo connector? And, you know, wouldn't it be simpler? Certainly simpler for the user, that's for sure. And again, there are wires hanging out at the bottom here that obviously have to go in certain places. So documentation is important. And speaking of documentation, this is what you get. You get the flowchart and quick start guide, which is a single A4 sheet of paper. On the other side, we've got the how to set your transmitters up, I suppose. Yes, that looks fairly straightforward. Also, I've got the GD2 brushless gimbal documentation, which I found in the envelope there. It tells us how to set up the brushless gimbal, I hope. And yeah, other side, more of the same. So hopefully this will tell us where all those little cables and wires and connectors go. That it doesn't actually look like it, and certainly in respect to the gimbal, there doesn't seem to be any diagrams showing the wiring. And likewise for this, there's no wiring diagrams. There is, what else is in the bag here? Hang on, we've got another piece of documentation. There is what looks like an update, or at least that's how it's the installation instructions. But again, no mention of the wiring. And there is a CD here for the 350 Pro. I'll have to put that on the computer and see if the missing information is on there. Okay, I'm going to have a grizzle here. I'm actually pissed off with this gimbal mounting system. It's just crap. It is so fiddly. You can't get at the tiny little screws in here. The wrench they give you is barely long enough, and even using my Bond House wrenches, the screw is hidden away inside in here, and the damn thing keeps cross-threading now. It is just a piece of rubbish. I mean, as I said, this has to be simple. This should just clip. You know, just push together, click. It shouldn't have to fart around with tiny, tiny little screws. And if you didn't have your own wrenches that are just too short to reach, I mean, come on, Walkera. Surely you've got someone who knows a little bit about engineering who can make this thing simple. I mean, really, as I say, all this has to do is clip into place. It doesn't have to be bolted with minuscule little metric screws. Silly. Okay, so I finally got it all together. There's the gimbal underneath now. These little wires, I'll have to cable tie them up or something because they're hanging out in the breeze now. I have to say that the basic unit is pretty straightforward. Okay, if you just want the multi-rotor, it goes together easy. You screw on the props and you screw on the legs and you attach the wires to the compass and so forth. It's really a breeze. It's really, really simple. So you can't fault Walkera there. It makes a very simple, ready to fly, or plug and fly multi-rotor piece of cake. I'll be doing the flight tests hopefully this weekend. My only area I can do my flight tests in is a local school, and it's the middle of the week. So there's children everywhere, in the sports ground, so I can't really, in all common sense, fly this over crowds of children, especially as it'll be a test flight. That's just not safe. And remember, safety first. So I'll be testing this on the weekend. I've got a lot of multi-rotors to test this weekend. Hopefully the weather will cooperate. But as I say, the basic multi-rotor, yep, it easy to put together, and it seems quite well made, certainly better than the original one. No complaints from me there. The add-ons, not so fussed. You can see I was getting frustrated putting that gimbal on. I mean, that should be a whole lot simpler than having to fiddle around with tiny screws. And the wiring, well, it's pretty, it looks like everything's an afterthought. Outside of the copter itself, this is all an afterthought. That's not so good. I would really want to see the whole thing, you know, just clipping together with every plug labelled and only able to go into one hole and only able to go one way round. That would make it the kind of plug and flying camera that people are probably looking for when they spend money on one of these. So in that respect, Walkera, it's a bit of a fail because the instructions are really bad. Hang on, I shall just disappear out of shot because I dropped these before. Here we go. I'm going to take something at random off the instruction sheet for what's this. This is the flowchart and quick start guide, right? Okay, so you'd expect this would be dumbed right down for the market they're going for. Let's have a look. Compass calibration, here we go. I'm going to read this verbatim. Please inspect the motor's lock or not before calibration. The factory default setting for the motors are locked after finishing ID binding. If the aircraft need to be recalibration after flight, it is a must to lock the motors again before calibration. Really? Honestly, the grammar, the syntax is so bad that even if you understood the terminology, it's hard to make sense of this. I mean, okay, you and I know what they're talking about, you know, make sure that you've got the thing disarmed before you calibrate it. That's fairly straightforward. But if you just bought this, if you just gone into a hobby shop and you'd plucked it off the shelf and paid your money and gone home and expected to take it out of the box and go and do some filming, you'd be sorely disappointed. You'd be confused, dazed and confused with these instructions. Now, I would have thought that given the size of Walkera, and it's not an insignificant company, obviously, I mean, for a start, just getting the plastic, the injection molds for the plastic here made is incredibly expensive. And then you've got all the other setup costs and the tooling and the design and development work. It's so expensive to take a product like this from conception to hobby shop shelf that Walkera must have a fair amount of, you know, heft behind it. So surely somewhere within that organisation there is somebody who has English as a first language. And if they have someone like that, surely they could have just run this by them and said, can you proofread this for us? But they obviously didn't. And that's a shame. That's a shame. And as it doesn't matter so much for you and I, but it does matter for the intended target market because, you know, as I said earlier on, this thing is really trying to hit the DJI Phantom market. And you can tell it by this transmitter. Look, the Walkera transmitters used to be all black, but now some of them are white. This is the Dimension 10 and it's white. Is that because the DJI Phantom transmitter is white? I have a sneaking suspicion that it is. Now this is the long range transmitter. Actually, first of all, I'll start with the Devo 7. The Devo F7, here we go. This is one of the transmitters you can use with the QR X350 Pro. Now, it's an FPV transmitter. Well, it doesn't transmit FPV, but it has a built-in screen like this. See that? Which enables you to see the FPV image on there. It's the same as the Hubsan Spyhawk. A lot of manufacturers are doing this now. They're putting a screen on the transmitter so you don't need goggles, and it cuts the cost down significantly. Now, obviously there are limitations. This screen is a bit shiny. You can probably see, look, see the camera, there I am. So it's got a plastic film, but I don't know if you can take it off. And I've looked online in the instructions, it doesn't mention removing the plastic film, so maybe it isn't a plastic film, maybe it's just bubbles in the manufacturing. I'm not too impressed with that. Maybe you can see the bubbles in there, I don't know. But that gives you your 5.8 gig video signal down. This transmitter itself has a range of 1 kilometre, they say, so it's got a little quarter wave sleeve dipole in here. That's a fairly conservative estimate, I think, considering the power level, 100 milliwatts. And it's basically all you need. It's got a little knob, so you can probably do your up and down panning with your gimbal through this little knob, which is fine. You really only need a single axis because it doesn't have a horizontal pan. It only has up and down and tilt. So you've only got one axis of control. So that's probably not too bad. Apart from that, meh, you know, I will be pulling this apart, doing a separate review on this because I want to see what 5.8 gigahertz receiver and antenna goodness they have inside. But I won't do that in this video because it's already getting way too long. Now, I should mention, of course, that the inbuilt video on the iLook camera and in here, they say it's good for up to 1 kilometre, but I don't know. Even with good circularly polarized antennas, 1 kilometre is, you know, a comfortable, you know, acceptable level. And the antennas in here, I don't know what they are and how directional they are. So I don't know. Other people have said they're getting about 300 or 400 meters of range with the FPV. So that's probably about what I'd expect, to be honest, and that's fine. This little screen and 300 or 400 meters of FPV range is probably fine because you probably only want to use it to line up your shots. If you want to get a nice video or something, you can make sure that the camera's pointing in the right direction through here, and your camera will be recording the video. So yeah, it's probably all you need. You're not going long distance cross country with one of these things. So for the intended market, it's quite a nice little transmitter, quite excellent in terms of the functionality. But we'll be testing it, see how far that video link goes, see whether you can actually see that image in the sunlight. I know with the hub sound system, I was disappointed with the built-in screen. But if you want to go further than the 1 kilometer, you can get this one, the Devo 10. See, this is claimed to do 2 kilometers. It's got this big high gain antenna on here, which means obviously it outputs a stronger signal, but only to the side. So if you're one of the people who flies like this, you know, you pinch and you point the antenna at the model, you're going to get a big surprise, because the return to home is going to kick in really soon, because there's virtually no signal comes off the end of these antennas. So you have to make sure your antenna is vertical and not pointed at the model. So of course it has a little thing like this. You can just put that up. Oh, there, no problems. Ooh, too much beer. Make sure it's tight first, and then you can put the antenna up like so, and then of course then you're much better. But I mean, there's no mention, don't think of this in the manual. This, again, the documentation is pretty sparse. I tried to get more information on the iLook camera. How do I turn off the transmitter? Couldn't find it. Went online, there's a web page, but it doesn't tell you. So I don't think you can turn the transmitter off in the iLook camera, which is a big shame. Yeah, as I say, this is 10 channels. It's got 2 knobs, so maybe you can vary both angles of the gimbal using these knobs. I don't know. I haven't bound it up and tried it yet. So there you go. Yeah, perfectly serviceable, perfectly adequate radio. It doesn't have a screen for your video. Of course, you have to use glasses and a separate receiver if you want to do FPV with this. And as I say, the only time you would want to use this is when you're not using the video system that is built into the iLook camera, because if this is only going to go 400 or 500 meters maximum, then there's no point in having a transmitter that'll do 2 kilometers, because you won't be able to see the model. You won't be able to see the video stream. Simple as that. So there we go. In summary, part 1 on the bench, what do I think? Well, as I said, basic copter. It looks just fine. They've improved the internal construction and sorted out that soldering. It's good, but it's not perfect, but it's good enough. The extra battery capacity, I'm not so sure that will give 25 minutes, because as anyone with a multi-rotor knows, as you start adding extra battery capacity, you're adding extra weight. So you reach a point of diminishing returns. It'll be interesting to see whether they've got the peak of that with this machine. We'll take it out and fly it. I'll make sure the gimbal's all going, and then part 2, I'll give you my final summary on it. But I'd say so far the basic unit is a lot better than the original QRX. Okay, I reserve my judgment. This add-on stuff, it's a crappy way to put it on. Very poorly documented. Not good enough Walkera. If I had a camera gimbal, I just want to go click and it's on, and plug and it's all set up. I don't want to have this farting around that I have to do here. I don't want these wires hanging in the breeze. It's no good. So hopefully they'll address that. But there we go. So stay tuned for part 2, in which I will be doing the flight testing, and it's a whole lot of things to flight test. I'll flight test this alongside the original QRX. We'll see how long the battery lasts. We'll see how well the auto land works, and all the other functions that you're looking for in one of these machines. Thank you for watching. If you've got questions or comments, put them below the video. I'll do my best to answer them if they're questions, and I'll read them if they're comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. I will see you again very soon, but in the meantime, it's back to the bench.